Typically, in fantasy fiction, you'll come across the mentor archetype, a character who provides guidance to the protagonist, playing a key role in shaping their growth and self-realization. While Elodin certainly exemplifies qualities of a mentor figure, his peculiar teaching style and eccentric behaviour makes him come off as more of a genius loon rather than a wise paternal figure so often seen in fantasy. Despite being one of the more funny and interesting side characters in the Chronicle, we actually know very little about him. We learn that he was an exceptionally bright and gifted pupil. At the age of 14, he was the youngest student to have ever been admitted to the university. When he turned 18, he became a fully fledged arcanist, at which point he decided to deepen his understanding of the magic known as naming. Elodin's progression and quickness at picking up such a revered skill caught the attention of the masters of the university, who appointed him Master Namer, and then Chancellor. Unfortunately, Elodin's tenure as Chancellor was short-lived, and he was forced to retire from the position. Something happened to him, he cracked, and was committed to the university's mental asylum, Haven. But what made him go mad in the first place? Many theorists suspect it has something to do with the strain naming can put on one's mind. It's possible that Elodin ended up in the asylum because of the weight of knowledge he acquired from naming. After all, naming is all about deciphering a subject's true name by unravelling everything that comprises a thing that has gone into its shaping since its creation. Let's use the example of a small stone. According to Elodin, the amount of knowledge necessary to perceive and understand the numerous forces and materials that have shaped something as simple as a stone over the centuries is too much for the conscious mind to handle, and thus a true name can only be perceived by a person's subconscious, or what Elodin refers to as the sleeping mind. It is no wonder then how naming can send a person over the edge, all of a sudden being able to hear the numerous sounds in the wind, or to just glance at an object and perceive it in all its complexity, right down to its molecular structure, is enough to drive anyone mad. Of course, it's possible that Elodin was never mad to begin with, and that his antics only appear crazy to non-namers. To learn naming, you have to be able to think outside the box. In the Kingkiller Chronicle, we learn that danger is one way in which to rouse the subconscious. It may be that the other masters grew concerned that Elodin was taking liberties with his students' safety by putting them into perilous situations in order to draw out their sleeping minds, and hence they could have mistaken his behaviour for madness. Throughout the Chronicle, there are a handful of moments that imply Elodin is at least somewhat sane. At first he refuses to take Kvothe on as a student, and is critical of working with someone as ill-tempered and reckless as Kvothe. Elodin is no fool. He sees our protagonist for what he is, by testing him. By spurring Kvothe into jumping off a roof, he realises that this is a young man who is willing to do something incredibly foolish in the pursuit of knowledge and power. Elodin understands that if someone only seeks knowledge for the sake of power, then inevitably they will abuse that power. Elodin only agrees to take Kvothe on as his student after he sees Kvothe demonstrate patience and compassion in trying to take care of Auri. In keeping with how ambiguous his mental state is, he likes to take advantage of his status as a lunatic just to do things that are funny. In one hilarious scene, he tricks Kvothe into helping him break into Master Hem's rooms so he can set fire to Hem's clothes, almost getting our protagonist into some serious trouble. Elodin's insanity is portrayed in a light-hearted, comical, but harmless sort of way. Because of this, there's a good chance he's just pretending to be crazy for his own amusement, while distancing himself from social norms. For all we know, Elodin could very well be the sanest person at the university. All the strange and peculiar things he does may just be his way of experiencing the world differently to broaden his sleeping mind's perspective. Nevertheless, anyone wanting to be Elodin's student has to be ready to endure all sorts of humiliations, troubles and shenanigans. This is especially if they show promise, like Kvothe's friend Fella. Apparently Elodin had woke her one evening and took her to an abandoned quarry north of town. He put wet clay in her shoes and made her spend the entire day walking around in them. He would go on to do stranger things, but feeling embarrassed, Fella breaks her story before she elaborates further. Of course, we see later on that the time she spent with Elodin did help her out in the long run, since she ultimately learnt the name of Stone. So while his eccentric tutoring is unorthodox and appears pointless, it turns out that there are important lessons to be found hidden beneath the surface. It's just that several of his students are so caught up in their frustrations with his unconventional style that they completely miss the point of what he's trying to show them. In chapter 83 of The Wise Man's Fear, Kvothe finally figures this out as he realizes that Elodin's naming lectures were actually to get his students to consider unanswerable questions in order to get them to think on the subject more. As Kvothe tells us, it's the questions we can't answer that teach us the most. They teach us how to think. If you give a man an answer, all he gains is a little fact, but give him a question and he'll look for his own answers. One of the joys of rereading passages from the series is discovering hints in the text that allude to other things. When Elodin uses Kvothe to break into Master Hem's rooms to burn his clothing, our young protagonist demands that Elodin teach him, but Elodin insists that he is teaching Kvothe, but that he refuses to learn. Elodin advises that doors are locked for a reason. People who don't have a key are supposed to stay out for a reason. This is clearly a nod to the 4-plate door located in the university's archives, and I think that this may be a small hint to Kvothe eventually breaking through the door, guarding the university's best kept secret. This unfortunately means that our young redhead friend never did learn that locked doors are best left alone. Another clever scene which alludes to the difficulty of learning naming occurs during one of Elodin's classes. He throws a milkweed pod into the air and tries chasing its contents while cursing. Kvothe considers this a waste of time, but when Elodin tumbles to the floor while trying to catch the seeds, he accidentally ends up breathing one in. I believe this is a metaphor for people trying to learn the name of the wind. You can try chasing the wind all you like, but attempting to learn its name with your waking mind is almost the same as trying and failing to catch the milkweed seeds. Only when you have searched long and far enough, when you least expect it, will your sleeping mind find what it is you're seeking. A few years ago, Patrick Rothfuss revealed at an event while playing the Call to Adventure card game that Elodin has secret Fae Blood, and that no one in the world knows about it, and that maybe he himself isn't even aware he has this special Fae Blood. This answers some fan theories, most prominent of which is that Elodin is a descendant of Fae beings. This was hinted at a few times in the story. Take Elodin's appearance. His dark eyes are often depicted as his most striking feature. During missions in the second book, one of the questions Elodin asked was, "Where does the moon go when it is no longer in our sky?" Which at the time sounded like whimsical nonsense, but later we discover that this information is only something a Fae, or a person knowledgeable in the true nature of the world, would know. The answer of course being that the moon passes between the human and Fae realms. When Kvothe returns to the university towards the end of The Wise Man's Fear, Elodin recognises Kvothe's cloak immediately as a shade made by fairy magic. Elodin having Fae Blood also explains how he was able to learn secrets so quickly and move up the rankings fast to become Master Namer. It does make me wonder though if he has some ties to Bast and Felurian, with Bast being the Prince of Twilight and Felurian being the Lady of Twilight. Perhaps Elodin is also part of their family. Maybe they are all from the same royal Fae bloodline. I mean, when Rothfuss was looking over the cards to create a story that happened to mimic his plan for Elodin, one of those cards is a secret royalty card. Of course, it's possible that Rothfuss is just messing with us. During the event, it did sound like he was describing Kvothe's story before changing it at the last second to match Elodin's, but we won't really know for sure if this is a misdirection on the author's part until after the third book is released. In the end, Elodin can be a bit of a jerk at times, but he is well intentioned. While he openly enjoys making insensitive jokes at the expense of others, deep down he's a good guy and a caring mentor. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share and subscribe, and please comment down below with your theories and what you like most about Elodin. I'd love to hear from you. All the best, and I'll see you next time.